Hello, guys, and welcome. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Our Obsessed with God podcast is now up on all major podcast providers. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on Podbean, it's on Google Podcasts, it's on every single podcast platform you can think of. So if you've been watching this on YouTube, you no longer have to go and subscribe to it on one of those platforms, and you'll just have the new episodes uploaded to you, or downloaded rather, the moment that they come out. Today's podcast is brought to you by Calgary Shamanic Services, traditional healing and empowerment for the modern world. Calgary Shamanic Services is owned by Shaman Wade. Shaman Wade offers a full range of shamanic services and healings, trainings, and workshops. During our conversation today, he said that he is going to be doing a new workshop in September that's online. That's a pretty exciting one. If you follow Wade, if you are a student of Wade, so you're going to want to listen and check out what he has coming up. Wade's practice is grounded in strong spiritual ethics, and he is committed to healing and transforming his clients. No issue is too big or too small for Wade. All that's required is that you show up with an intention to overcome what is ailing you, and Wade will do everything he can to right your wrongs, help you get it back on track. Contact Wade at calgaryshaman.com. Contact Wade on Facebook at Shaman Wade. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Obsessed Marketing and Sales Solutions. If you're one of those people that's listening to this podcast wondering why is a marketing company speaking to me before we speak about spirituality, it's because that's what my wife Lane and I do for a living. We take people's ideas, their businesses, their brands, and their products, and we help them take them to the world and help them to make the living that they should be making with them. We do a lot with spiritual-based businesses. If you are a Reiki healer, if you are a spiritual healer, if you are any sort of natural, holistic, anything to do with spirituality, and you are having a hard time getting your name, your product, your services out there, contact us. We can help you get it out into the world. We can help you start to make that impact that you know you can make that has been hard for you to do. A lot of people in our lifestyle have a hard time getting their business, their brand, their products out there. There's a real stigma with some people that you shouldn't be making money with your products and services. This is incorrect. You need to have a strong business so you can have the most impact that you can on the world. You need to build that business so that your big, strong voice that's working for positivity can get out there, and people will know who you are, and they will listen to the things that you need to get done. On the podcast today is my man, Shaman Wade. Wade right now is up in northern Alberta at his farm in High Prairie. I think I just screwed that up. Sorry, Wade. He says on the podcast where he's at. He's north of Edmonton, south of Peace River. We talk about everything from his buffalo herd to his farm to what he's got going on up there. And he's live streaming with me from the middle of one of his pastures. So it was a wonderful conversation with Wade. He, again, like he always does, said some amazing things that were super profound that just made me think, like, just when I think I've heard all that this guy has to offer, he says more unbelievable things that make me think about how I'm living my life. So without further ado, here is today's installment of the podcast with Shaman Wade. Enjoy. We as seekers are all searching for that divine experience with our God. Listen in as we discuss different people's stories and perspectives about God from their walk of life and from their part of the world. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. So we're live again, Wade. Here we are with Wade. Wade's, as you can see, Wade's in the middle of nowhere covered in dirt farming right now. How's it going?
Good, yeah. It's been always a bit of a shift, coming up here and shifting gears. The first few days are always a bit of a challenge, but once you get rolling, there's lots to do, right? So you just keep rolling until you get her done.
Maybe tell everyone where you are, Wade, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I'm in High Prairie, Alberta, where I grew up. Beautiful country. It's about 4 hours north of Edmonton. Just trying to I'm new at this. I'm doing it live off of my phone, so this is kind of new for me. So I'll give you a bit of a panorama here. So I'm kind of out in nature. So if you, I posted some videos or pictures on my Facebook yesterday at Shaman Wade, just to kind of get a sense of what we've been up to up here. But in High Prairie, south of High Prairie right now on our farm, just been working with the buffalo a bit, and it's hay season here. It's been quite hot up here, so the hay is quite thin this year. A lot of people are struggling to find hay. It's kind of a challenge, but it's hopefully we're supposed to get some rain here this weekend, so everyone's got their fingers crossed. I think some people are praying. It's pretty dry, but we're a bit luckier here, I think, in High Prairie. We're close to the lake, so get a bit more rain here. So it's been, I think, manageable for a lot of people, but rain never hurts. So yeah, so just kind of keeping up with chores, working with all the farmers that I work with, and just making sure everything's kind of going in the right direction. But it's all been good.
That's great. We just got hay for our horses enough through the winter, and it was like we had to barter and scrape and find hay for them for the remainder of the year, because like you say, it's starting to get sparse and people are starting to plan and they're buying green feed and hay already, and it's this heat hasn't helped anything out. I actually read an article this morning that they're projecting that the crops down south here are going to be some of the worst in 25 years because of the heat.
Wow. And do you feed them square or round bales, your horses?
They all get squares because they're spoiled and ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they're my daughter's horses. So she gets to do what she wants when she wants with her horses. So they eat better than most people, and they live better than most people too.
Most animals do. Sounds like my dog.
So how is it you have a buffalo herd, Wade? And I'm super curious to that, because like I've told you before, like we have cows here that like we raise our own beef to eat, but buffalo is a whole other thing. How do you get started with buffalo?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, it was back in the 90s. For some reason I had a preoccupation with them, and I don't even recall why, to be honest with you. This is back when they were first starting to get interest in them. So I remember going to auctions, and the prices were through the roofs then. It was like $50,000 for a bull, I mean, the top bull, obviously, but it was just nuts. So me and my buddy were, going to auctions and looking into this, but we're university student, no money, trying to talk my dad into, hey, maybe we should get some buffalo. And he kind of said, that's a crazy idea. What do we need buffalo for? And then one day we bought a bunch of buffalo, and that's kind of ever since we just kind of always had them. And for us, they've been more kind of, we've never been really into production. They've been more just kind of grazing on our land, We take one every once in a while just to eat. But we're looking at options now. I'm trying to regrow the herd and maybe, get back into production. It's very healthy meat, very low fat content, and very healthy for you. They have a beautiful organic life out here, grazing on, thousands of acres, and it's just, it's wonderful for them, and so just kind of, seeing where things go, and the beautiful creatures, and it's great to spend time with them, and they're very intelligent, and it's just I feel blessed.
That's cool. How big is your buffalo herd?
Yeah, it's pretty small right now. It used to be quite big at one time, but we called them back, and so I'm down to about 20, 25 right now, depending on how many calve out. So manageable. My buddy's kind of watching them. I'm 7 hours away, so I come up as much as I can. But so we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and just kind of keeping them going.
That's cool. I was looking at your photos that you posted online of your bull that you posted, and like I'm not a big fan of bulls to begin with. My son is a junior bull rider, which is,
oh, wow.
If you're into that, that's the thing you like to do. But when I see bulls, it just freaks me out all the time. And when you posted that photo of your bull, those buffalo bulls just horrify me because they're so menacing looking. I've never had anything go bad with a buffalo bull, but every time I see one, I'm just like, oh no, that thing's so terrifying. I couldn't imagine hunting that with a spear, with a cape on my back.
And that's not on Zoom either. We just gave them a few oats, and we're standing right in front of them. they're quite tame, you know, and you got to be careful. They're wild still, but when they get to know you, they're quite friendly. So we were standing probably 3 feet, 4 feet in front of them, and always ready to run and jump in the truck. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
But they're pretty tame. With my dad, he's passed on now, but he could walk. We could walk right into the herd with him. You know, I remember with my son, he was like 3. We'd walk into the herd with him. I was always a bit nervous, but my dad said, "No, nothing to worry about." You know, but ready to grab my kid always. But they're always quite tame, so it's got to be careful. You always got to be careful.
That's funny. When you drive back up to your farm, Wade, is your drive up there? Is it sort of a therapeutic time for you where you start shifting gears into being away from the city, being at the farm, being able to reconnect with stuff? Or is it sort of stressful for you right up until ground zero and then it takes you a couple of days to unwind it? And then, because like I can see behind your shoulder, like it's beautiful. You guys have water up there. The grass is green and lush and amazing. And
it's lusher than it looks. It's pretty thin when you get down into it, but it's... It looks pretty. It looks pretty good from a distance, yeah. But it's usually a lot. We get a lot of rain up here usually, so it's usually pretty thick. Like last year, you could barely sell hay. There was so much hay. Now this year, barely any hay. You know how it goes, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of the drive, it's every year is different. You know, when I come up, given the circumstances. But it's usually after. For me, it's I always come up through Swan Hills. Very beautiful country, big rolling hills, probably almost mountains, you know, or foothills. And once I hit that kind of single lane road after I pass Edmonton, or Stony Plain, and all those places, that's when I kind of get into cruise mode. The QE2 is kind of crazy now. It's either going 140 or you're going to get run over. Kind of it's challenging driving on that. Not like when we were kids, you know. It's so that's always a bit stressful. But otherwise, I enjoy it. I feel lucky to be able to do that drive and just, you know, enjoy the scenery and just kind of reflect and contemplate. And you know, for me, that was always one of the ways I was able to kind of contemplate is long car drives. You know, just driving and contemplating, and you know, often having spiritual experience through that. I think a lot of people do. Yeah,
that 100% is my move. My wife and we drive all the time. If we have nothing better to do, we just load up kids and go for a drive and start speaking about stuff. I have the same thing. Contemplating. I find it's the only time that my brain is just sort of like singular and I can actually contemplate things. So I envy your drive up there. So when you're up there, Wade, are you doing any? Do you focus on any shamanism? Do you focus on any sort of spirituality, or do you just sort of take in where you're at and try not to overthink it and just sort of go about doing your labor intensive work, which I find is therapeutic too, and carry about your day, or does shamanism sort of get a back burn when you're up there?
Yeah, I'd say a back burner. Like for here, it's to kind of getting caught up on tasks, and I think for me, it's just driving down the gravel roads and just taking in the scenery and the air and the smells and listening to country music on the radio station and just kind of chilling out. You know, it's always kind of very relaxing, and it's just a way of life. I mean, that's how I grew up, and so it's kind of when you do things, it pulls you back, right, and it kind of pulls you into that state of consciousness, and I always really, really enjoy it. But it's like anything else, you know, everything, you can be surrounded by beauty and it wears off. I've lived in very beautiful places over the course of my life, with houses with mountain views. And when you move in, it's like, wow, I'll never stop looking at this. And then, you know, 3 months later, you don't even see the mountains anymore. You're too engrossed with your problems and your everyday life. And it's funny how that happens. But I think it has an effect on us. Just for me, being in nature, I mean, I didn't grow up in the city, so I don't totally resonate with that type of experience. I'm always kind of cursing in traffic and ask my kids. not good at city traffic still after all 30 or 40 years or 30 years. I'm used to the gravel roads.
Do you think you'll ever move back up north, back up to your farm, or is Calgary where you live?
Yeah, who knows, right? Where life takes you. I'm kind of always on this journey, see where it takes you. I mean, I'm there now for probably the long haul, but you never know, right? You got to keep the doors open. And like, you know, going back to that issue about there's beauty everywhere, right? I remember living in Barcelona, Spain, and studying architecture and urban design, and as a country kid, you don't understand those elements. You don't understand urban life and what that means. But when you see when people have been immersed in cities for thousands of years, and they start to create beauty and design that facilitates experience, you can see there's a real beauty in urban life as well. And I think in North America, we're just not quite there often. There's definitely pockets of that in places. But I mean, it's such beauty everywhere, and it comes in terms of our creative process and how we, you know, bring that beauty into what we do. Even with the land you use, we've been fortunate to. I'm blessed with the land we have, and it's very beautiful. It's been not just knocked everything. It's not just fields. We have like kind of work with the land. We have fields that meander and kind of work with the way it is. We have lots of trees, so it's quite beautiful. Whereas most country, it's all just flat, open prairie, right? And but that's for production. You know, farmers have to make a living, and trees are a problem often. They get in the way of straight lines, and when you're trying to keep your head afloat, especially in these times with the weather the way it is, you gotta be efficient, And so we've been lucky to really preserve nature where I am. So it's always to be out here is always a real blessing. And there's so much wildlife everywhere. There's bears, there's wolves, there's elk, there's moose, there's deer, there's everything,
That's exactly what you said. Was my neighbors just to the east of us. They have this pasture land, and in the middle of it there was like a pocket of 4 or 5 poplar trees that were they were at least 100 years old, if not they were older. But they sold this pasture land was where they turned their bulls out, and so they'd have these Angus bulls stomping around in there. But they sold this land to quite a big farmer from around this area, and that farmer came in last year and bulldozed those trees over, and now it's just one big canola crop. And like, what you said, right? Like I drive by that and I'm like, oh no, I realize this guy needs to make his living, but
yeah,
it's these trees were bulldozed over, and then there's just this heap of mulch basically in the middle of the field around, like, right? Like your tractor runs on GPS, and if there's a tree in the way, your $3 million setup on your tractor is going to get all screwed up. So they're mashing these trees down that have been around forever. It's just like, on one hand, for me, it's heartbreaking, and I totally understand it at the same time, as much as I don't agree with it. I'm like, oh man, I get it. But
it's funny how like a little grove of trees or a tree standing in a field, we become attached to it on our drives. It's just every day we drive by it, and it's a part of our experience, and it's a part of us. And when it's gone, it's like losing someone.
It is. It for sure it is. And like I drive by, and every time I drive by this field, I look over and I can see there's just a couple of tree stumps sticking out that they're huge, right? I mean, they've been there forever, and it's just stacked up in this canola field that just flowered out. And it's a shame, but I understand how it happens. Everyone's got to make their living, and that's how they make theirs. But
I think it's balanced, right? It's how do we do things sustainably? How do we do things working with Mother Nature and in the environment? It's tricky, I think I was a romantic always, especially growing up, and especially my university days. But you got to be a realist too. You have to have a healthy economy. You have to have a healthy nature. You have to have a healthy society. And how do you find that balance? I don't think we're in balance right now, obviously. No. I think it's becoming more part of our conscience, and I think hopefully in the future we will be. But it's I mean, when you become a materialist, it's a problematic, because the almighty dollar drives everything. It gives you more power to buy things and to feed those desires and cravings, right? But it's tricky, I think being a realist doesn't mean you need to use common sense, right? And how you manage things. But at the same time, you got to pay your bills, right? Even you can't being romantic. It's hard to pay the bills. Let me tell you.
That's right, but that is, man. It's hard. But Lane and I, my wife Lane and I say that to our clients all the time, about who are having a hard time getting their name or their product or their services out there. And people have such a romantic view of how things need to look, and there's so many people that have a real stigma to trying to earn a living. And like, you know, you and I have had this conversation. There's a
Yeah.
balance between being appropriate and making a living, but the best way to make an impact is to grow a real sustainable business and then
Mhm.
start imposing the things that you would like to see on the world. Because it's, you know, it's so difficult when you're a well wisher that's just saying, you know, you know, that the trees in that field are an excellent example. You know what I mean? If I had 250 G's, I'd have bought that quarter, or 300 grand. I'd have bought that quarter to save some trees. But if you don't have that stroke, you don't get to pay to play, which is horrible. But it's the way it
Yeah.
goes with so much of the stuff. Do you find, Wade, that because you have a because you're educated in environmental science, does that come into play with like where you're at professionally? Like when you're farming, do you use a lot of those things, or was a lot of your training, was it was it theory, or was a lot of it a practical thing that you get to imply, or you get to plug in every single day when you're up there?
Yeah, a bit of both. I mean, obviously as a consultant for a lot of years, so I was, in the dirt, learning things. And but I think it's always about being practical, right? It can't be romantic when you're managing land. You got to be practical. Forests grow and die. There's a peak, and they can become a fire hazard even, right? Especially with these, you have a forest in decline that's full of dying trees. Well, that's with this weather conditions. It's could just be a fire trap. You know what I mean? So how do you
Mm-hmm.
manage that? And it's being conscious of these things. I love trees more than most people, but at the same time, you got to manage the forest in a way, right? And you got to be conscious of that. So sometimes it's good to take trees out. To be honest with you, if because and I remember learning this when in my grad studies. If you don't manage a forest properly, it creates a huge fuel load. If you're suppressing forest fires all the time, you have all this. We need fire, right? You need
Mm-hmm.
trees being cleared out. Maybe you need logging to a certain degree, right? And then responsibly and sustainably, because it manages things, right? Because if you don't have the natural forces taking place, you create these huge fire loads, and then when a fire comes through, it just gets out of control. There's
Mm-hmm.
just so much fuel there to burn because the fires haven't rolled through. Mother Nature hasn't been able to take care of things. So this is where, as humans, we've been intervening. So we have also got to intervene, to manage things as well. So not being romantic. And that's the whole getting into spirituality a little bit. I think that's one of the biggest barriers with people with spirituality is romanticizing it. And that's probably the biggest trap, to be honest with you. And that's what I think we're trying to do is with our podcast is just talk about everyday life and bridging the two, spirituality and everyday life. Because really if you can't bring spirituality into your everyday life, what's the use of it? There is no use of it. It's here to help your everyday life. And the problem, I think most people when they first start on the spiritual path romanticize about it. And there's a lot of books that romanticize about it. They don't get into the dirt of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have to really embrace the dirty side of it, and the practicalities of it. And we probably offend people what we're even talking about, to be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a notion in their idea that spirituality is holy, spirituality is squeaky clean, spirituality is reverence. Well, no, it's everything. It's the dirt, it's the bullshit, it's everything. Everything
Mm-hmm.
comes from spirit. Everything, until you can embrace everything, you're not going to go very far down the spiritual path. And that's more of an issue of how do we affect change in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're agents of change. We're agents of action as humans. And I think we don't want to be a pacifist in the sense, or a fatalist where we just stand back and think life's just happening to us and we can't do anything about it. I think we need to be an active player to really stand up for what we believe in and to try to make positive change. And this is when we start to move towards good things in this world. We start to create what we're trying to achieve by action, through action,
Mm-hmm.
and not just kind of sitting back. So yeah, romanticism is an interesting thing. I mean, I was the biggest romantist out there for the longest time, and I think it's important to go through that,
For
but don't
sure.
judge, and work with each other. That's the key, I think.
When I did the Spirits of Nature course, actually, I did it at this beautiful this beautiful home just south of Tabor. This lady,
Yeah,
amazing, and she invited everyone into her home, but her family, they're huge potato farmers, right? Like there's
yeah,
no I mean, that's as industrial as an operation as you could possibly get. There's nothing natural left about what they do. But I was super judgmental about, like, when I first went there and I first showed up, I was sort of, I was being judgmental as to what she did. But like you're saying, like, there's a practicality to it. But you meet this lady and her husband that own this place, and they're the best people you'll ever meet. And they're well integrated into spirituality, and they're well into trying to make the world a better place. But this is what they do for a living, and they're trying to reconcile both of those things. And it's very easy if you're a spiritual romantic to stand on the outside and judge these people ruthlessly the way that I did. And the moment you meet them, you're like, oh, okay, your story is totally different than what I thought. Like, you guys aren't just out spraying stuff on the ground just to irritate people.
And we all love French fries, Or frites.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you gotta also appreciate everyone comes from organic farming roots, right? I mean, 100 years ago, there was no chemicals, no anything, right? So all these farming families have been around for a long time, many, many generations. And if they don't change and grow, they're going to lose their land, they're going to lose their livelihood, they're going to lose their way of existing, and it's generations, so don't judge, and I think a lot of people are trying to do the right thing and trying to manage things in a proper way, and it's tough, right? And it also changes as a scale of farming. The more acres you have, it changes how you play the game, and often that's out of your control, unfortunately. But I mean, it comes down to your morals and your values, and also food quality, right? And I think ultimately the consumers have the say. It's what we purchase and how we make those choices. And if everyone's purchasing or demanding a certain product, well, then people are going to produce it. So if someone has certain beliefs, so use your dollars wisely. Mm-hmm. That's your vote. That's the way you change the world, through your spending habits. So think before you purchase and what you purchase, because everything counts.
Do you with your farm and your farm, your animals, your place, do you have a baseline of organics that you have to do, or do you sort of take every problem that arises in every management sort of subsection that comes up and then decide what needs to be done, whether it needs to be exclusively organic or if something else needs to be implied? Or do you have any sort of methodology like that?
You got to be practical. You know what I mean? You got to do whatever you have to do in terms of the issues, right? Mm-hmm. You have to just manage in a way that keeps things going in a positive way. And that's what I'm realizing, sometimes you have noxious weeds. What are you going to do? Different ways to approach that. And you got to be practical, and you got to be practical with the whole system you're trying to keep in place, and how you manage things. So everything's kind of case by case, and what's the best way to approach this right now, mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to do things I don't want to do, but I have no choice. It's the best, most efficient way over the long haul to do it. And it's going to have maybe the best impact today, but over 10 years, what's the right way to go, Mm-hmm. So you always get looking at the big scale and how you're going to manage things. And it's, I work with a lot of farmers here too, and, using their advice, they're stewards of the land. They have, decades of knowledge. So really working with their advice as well, and trying to always make the best choices going forward.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys grow any crop up there, or do you guys just have buffalo and hay that you knock down?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done canola. Right now most everything is in hay. I have one farm that's doing barley on my land right now. So it's always changing. I'm working with different farmers. So sometimes I'm planting stuff. Sometimes I have people planting for me or with me, or crop mm-hmm. sharing. It's kind of year by year. It's I'm not up here full time, so it's tricky, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So it's, every year is different, and it's just kind of doing what's best.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any people from your, like, obviously that's where you grew up, so I assume you came to shamanism and spirituality outside of that place. Are the people that you see and the people that you correspond with up there, are they a part of your spiritual group of people, or do you mostly just correspond with people that are from, you're just sort of reliving these moments from your youth and being younger.
Yeah, I think it's just people that are just normal people like me and you, and maybe they're spiritual, maybe they're not. I don't know, to be honest with you. And I mean, when I grew up, I didn't really experience. I experienced the spirituality of nature, as you can see, right? This is what I grew up with, walking through the forest and seeing animals and spending my time, in this experience. And it really shifts and changes you. So, and I think when you live in these, if you're fortunate to live in nature, you have that spiritual kind of awareness always, but you have problems and you have battles, and you have beliefs and you have things pushed on you, and you have religion, you have all these things. So and we talked about this in one of the podcasts about just our lines of development. So there you could be, it's not that cut and dry, right? We're all evolved on different levels over multiple types of intelligences, emotional, spiritual, moral, even relational, communicative, all these things, rationally, contemplatively, like what we all have, these different intelligences and lines of development, and we're all working and moving and changing, and everyone's kind of at their own place. So I always try to see the goodness in people, to be honest with you. Like we've talked about before, the best in someone, to be honest with you. And I'm someone I like, with the people I work with, I just want to be fair. I'm not trying to, and that's the trick, right? I'm a fair person. I want to be fair, and I want to work with people that are fair. And if people, and it's tough, right? It's human nature. People want to take more for themselves often. And it's nice when you can come together and create fairness for both, and equality and equity for both. And I think as a society, if we can do that, try to create fairness for all, which is challenging because there's so many multiple views, and there's demographics, and there's certain percentages of the population that have more, carry more weight, so it's always tricky, right? But I think if we're working towards fairness and equality in our business transactions, in our, education systems, and our economic systems, and, everything we do, it creates a good society. And that's what I try to do when I'm on my land and working with people, is try to create fairness. And it's tough when you don't know what that is, because everything's always changing every year. So you got to trust people, and to work with them, and to see where it all can kind of pan out to.
I really struggled with that, and still do, but I struggled with that for a long time. What you said about fairness, and do you think, Wade, that the fairness that you're speaking about and that we're speaking about right now, do you think that fairness is a thing that should be legislated, or do you think that fairness needs to be something that if you're aware of something, that the way it needs to be, or if things need to change, do you think it's up to, people, you and I, anyone else, just speaking to people about fairness and trying to have those conversations? Because I always feel like this is where it comes to a head, is when you speak about fairness to people, and it's usually between two sides. It's predominantly the left wing of society says this is not fair, legislate against this one having, and then the right side says this is fair, we got to this on our own, do your own thing. Do you think it's a balance of those two things, or do you think it's a thing that should be legislated to change the direction of stuff?
Well, that's tricky because fairness is relative, right? And like you're kind of alluding to, it's a kind of a wide spectrum of what I think is fair and you think is fair. It could be two different things, and it's tough to legislate things like that. I think there's kind of broad kind of things we should legislate to kind of create a free democracy and equality and these sorts of things. And I remember I was at a philosophy talk one time. I forget what we're talking about legislating something. And it's funny because certain things I think you should, right? Like, for example, when you're driving through a school zone, there's speed bumps. Man, I've hit some of those speed bumps hard and probably wrecked my vehicle at times, I shouldn't have been going that fast, but I wasn't paying attention. But I didn't want that speed bump there. I got the cost. But someone put that there to save lives, so that was kind of legislated to be put there. And I think it should be there, right? It probably saved a lot of kids' lives. So I think, we need those speed bumps in our legislation. So we save lives, and we have a a system and a democracy that's good for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It helps everyone get ahead, that supports everyone. Everyone has a different idea what that means, and that's why we see shifting governments and different political views. But I think it's always kind of in the middle. It's you gotta. That's why I've been involved in politics in the past. I ran campaigns as a campaign manager, but politically, I've always voted for the best candidate. I've never really voted for particular. I've always thought, like in the States, they have either a Democrat or Republican. I don't get that. I've always thought I vote for the best candidate. Usually, sometimes you got to vote for a party, because there's no point at times. But I mean, I always think like I want to vote for someone that's going to represent me, that has similar values as I do, and so I'm not really, and that changes year to year and election to election, right? So I find it hard to label myself as one thing, to be honest with you. And I think it'd be nice if the parties could work together, and always be looking at the common good of society. But I get it; they're in competition. Whoever holds the power makes the choices. Those are the ones that get the pensions and the paychecks, right? The rest of us are doing something else. But I get it because I ran a campaign. We lost,
But that's it, and it's just a business. And like I'm so glad you said that, because I always forget about this. But it's very difficult for me to with identity politics, because my wife and I, we have multiple businesses. We professionally help people with their businesses, but we are well and truly indentured into spirituality, and like it's a hard one to reconcile, because the groups of people that I hang out with are extreme to either side. Like the bulk of people I spend my time with spiritually or speak to spiritually have nothing to do with business, and they don't want to. And I understand that entirely. I understand when they say like, it's not for me. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to charge people to do this or to do that. And then the people that I deal with who are friends of mine who own businesses they just have no time for spirituality. Is ridiculous. To do this thing is ridiculous. Everyone should be left alone. This is a free market. Stay away from me. And it's a hard way to live, man, because like I find every single conversation I'm in, I find that there's a potential argument that's coming up, or somebody said something to me that's like, oh, well, I understand you don't like that, but this person needs that for their business, and vice versa. I understand you want to bulldoze that into a parking lot, but we should probably think about what you want to do before this happens. And yeah, it's a very, like, I've never had the experience like you did about managing a political campaign. Maybe we'll get into that on another one, because I feel like you have to tell that entire story. But do you?
Let me say one thing not about the political campaign, but I was fortunate after to work with a lot of left and right wing people after, just in terms of projects I did, and it was really fascinating to see how much commonality we did have. Because you're in different spectrum politically when you're doing a political campaign. But then when you come together, there's so much more commonality than differences, to be honest with you, and even say an environmental ethic, working with, extreme conservatives, just how much of environmental conscience they have had too, and just it's shocking that I think we got to realize that we have more similarities than differences. We always fight about those differences, a small percentage that we disagree upon. Maybe it's 5-10%, but generally we agree on 90% of the stuff. So why don't we kind of come together through consensus and consensus building and working together, instead of fighting over these scraps that we disagree about? And I think that's what makes politics so ugly, I think. Yet when we're so common, we have so much similar interests, but yet we fight about such little things, and it creates a war. And yet we're so similar. So I think that's one of the greatest teachings I had getting into politics. And that's something I never thought I'd ever would have done. I'm not that interested in politics like some people are. People grow up in political families. That's kind of their lifeblood. But, to kind of meet people from the whole spectrum, from, Greens to liberals to conservatives to, reformers and all these sorts of things. And just, growing up in Alberta, I mean, people have a sort of notion of what Alberta is even, but Alberta is a beautiful place. People are very friendly here, welcoming. It's a really hard work, roll your sleeves up population of people. I know with the floods in Calgary, in 2013, it's just a community that stood up and cleaned everything up. A community that helped the neighbors out, which is, pretty rare. I don't think you find that in every corner of the world, So, we live in a beautiful place that's free, and I think we're typecast here in Alberta our politics. But if you pull back the layers of that, a lot of goodness, a lot of similar beliefs, and a lot of good people on the whole spectrum of politics. And I just wish we could really get together and to make East our province better and the rest of Canada better and the world better, just by looking at what we agree upon and working together. I wish we could do that more in politics instead of fighting about little details and just, it's too bad because there's so much potential always, as I believe in. If we work together, the human spirit is so great. And when we work towards the positive and we work towards building something, we can create anything. I really, truly believe it. And I think it starts with politics too, because that's where the power is of change.
It's I've really found in the last, well, I'm sure it's happened my whole life and before I was even alive, but in the last 10, 15 years, I find people that I've spoken to politically who are ruthless to either side, who live in this province. I mean, it all boils down to the same thing. They don't feel like their voice is being heard. Like they feel like they have valid opinions and that nobody gives a shit about what they're saying. And one thing that's happened in the last year that blew my mind. Honest to God, I can't believe Albertans rallied the way they did. And I'm so happy that they did, because so much of this rallying came from the community I live in and some of the communities to the north and like basically Calgary South. Like it's very conservative down here. Like you don't find a whole bunch of liberal people marching around a hayfield. But the amount of pushback that was received over the mine that was proposed by Tech or TAC or whoever it was, that blew my mind. And but before, in an earlier part of my life, I'm a steam fitter by trade. Like I went to SAIT. I worked industrially. I worked in industrial systems. I've done mines. I've done oil facilities. I've done food facilities. I've done every single thing you could think of. And every person I know in this province or I would speak to sort of would rally behind industrial things being done so people could have jobs. And it blew my mind, and I was so thrilled when that mine was proposed. And everyone, I don't know one person, to be honest, who was like, that's a great idea. Let's cut off the top of this mountain and pull a bunch of coal out of it. Every single person said no. And I'm blown away by it. I mean, there's signs all up and down our road when we drive to our house, like no mining, no open pit mining, no mining, no mining. And I've spent a lot of time in Australia, and I'm aware of what open pit mining does industrially. And I'm so proud of it as an Albertan that, people said, no mas, like we can do other things. Like we can drill some wells here and there, but let's not cut the top off of a mountain.
Yeah, I mean, we're more progressive than you think. Look at Calgary. Mayor Nenshi has been in power for a long time, and that's who would have thought that was possible? What I mean? Very creative, very intelligent, great ideas often, but very well loved and supported by quite a few people, right? And it just shows the politics in Alberta is quite strange in a lot of ways, which is quite beautiful. There's a lot of opportunity there, and I think we're typecasted, unfortunately, but there's a lot of diversity here and a lot of really good people and hardworking people with that want to get things done. Very entrepreneurial too, and that's because I think people here realize, hey, someone's not going to do it for me. I got to do it myself. I got to fix it myself. I got to find a way to make this work. And then I've always you can count on your neighbor here. Your neighbor is always going to come and help you here in the country, in the city, and but we don't wait around for someone to do something for us. Like when they said the floods, we didn't wait around for the cleanup crew to come. We were the cleanup crew and we got the job done, right? And I think that's what I think attracts people to this place. And we're lucky, in all of Canada, and we're really lucky to where we live. To be honest with you, and I really appreciate it every day.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's I've especially living in the country. I mean, in the city, I've had some great neighbors too. I've lived in a lot of big cities, but living where I live now, like we live 5-6 miles west of a small town, right? So there's no one around us, and our neighbors are outstanding. Our neighbors will do absolutely anything. Like we can call them for anything at any moment, and they're going to come with a tractor or themselves or anything we would need to lend a hand. And it's you really forget about those human experiences until you're in a moment of need and you can call on your neighbor who they've got their own things going on and they're they show up to give you a hand. Like it's an amazing thing to me.
So be a good neighbor. It builds community, it builds strength. So, and think about that, be a good neighbor.
Isn't that the truth? Be a good neighbor. So what else do you have going on up there, Wade, other than buffaloes and doing some maintenance?
Yeah, I've got a road that's kind of caving in by one of our properties. I'm meeting with people tomorrow to see what we're going to do about that, and hope we're going to have some time to relax. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It's funny when you get up here, things sit for so long and things don't like to sit. So I got all these trucks in my yard that none of them will start. So I'm driving my van all around the country right now. Good thing it's an old van because these roads are pretty rough, let me tell you. So it's taking a beating, but I haven't had time to even get my farm vehicles going. As soon as I get here, it's full speed running and just keep things going. So hope maybe tomorrow I'll fix a truck. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a fuel pump. I don't know. I got to get under there and take a look.
Oh man, that sucks. I don't envy you. Those days of my life are. I don't miss those. I still end up doing a lot of maintenance here because we have some land and animals and equipment ourselves. But like, holy moly, I just like. It's hard for me to stay composed now when something goes wrong with equipment and I got to fix it. I have a lawnmower that I need to fix a clutch cable on. Like I got better things to do than deal with the lawnmower clutch cable, But
well, there's always problems, and that's the thing. I think the problem is we don't want problems and we try to push them away, but you got to be dynamic. You're never going to go through life without problems. And there's times in our life when they're insurmountable. They just keep coming and coming. And it feels like we're being ground down by life, and and I really truly believe that often that's a lesson. It's a time when life is, you're almost going through a spiritual process, I think, when life gets really tough at times. And I know spiritually often we go through experiences where things are removed that we don't need anymore, that things are removed. And we're fortunate if those experiences happen because we can cover a lot of ground quickly. But, that's on the spiritual level. On the physical level in everyday life, that often happens too, where things get tough. Maybe we're making a lot of wrong choices and life pushes back and we're being, and so resistance isn't a bad thing and problems aren't a bad thing. They feel bad. And they feel bad because I think that's what makes us change. To be honest with you, if they felt good, we wouldn't change.
Mm-hmm.
It's when things that feel good, we don't really think about much. We just kind of enjoy them. It's the things that feel bad that make us think, that make us question our life, make us wonder if we're doing the right things. It's through those bad experiences that help you get on the right path, that help you figure out what you're meant to do in this life. And I think that if you're going through a tough time, it's tough. We all go through them. We're human. We're going to all go through more. And I think it's important to see it as a spiritual process, as a part of growth and development. What can I learn here? What am I doing wrong? And what's life trying to teach me and show me? And what's persisting in my life that's bad? And why is it persisting? And what am I doing to facilitate that? Or I mean, not facilitate, but what am I doing to keep that into place? And to look at our life. And I think it's important. I believe the path of shamanism is a path of power, spiritual power. And I think that what that really means is it's about claiming your life. It's about stepping into your power and about claiming who you are in this world. And too often we become victims. We all do it. We become a victim. We blame other people. We tell other people that's their fault. I did nothing wrong. Maybe that's the case, but very often we have a part to play in that, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being a victim in life, you're disempowering yourself. And I think it's important bad things happen to all of us. Some people go through really, really bad things, traumatic things, that are unjust and unfair. But I think it's important to get the healing you need and to learn from that and to help people maybe not go through these experiences and to not become a victim to these experiences because we're giving our power away, no matter how hard they are. And I think that, and it's easy to say and it's hard to do, to be honest with you, but think about your power. Think about who you are in this world. We all go through very tough, struggling times. We're all going to suffer. We do get through them, no matter how dark it is right now for you, to really, do something. The darkness, we talk about dark nights of the soul. Dark nights of the soul, I believe, are a point in our development where we've kind of outgrown the stage of development where we're at. Mm-hmm. And life is getting dark on us. Life is getting hard. because we're meant to grow. And if we just kind of didn't do anything, if we just sat around, we'd never change and grow. So life becomes kind of mundane. Life can lose its meaning. Life can become meaningless at times. And that's really life it's its own mechanism to push you forward, give you a kick in the ass, to get off the couch, to do something with your life. If you don't like this, then do something. That's what life is saying. If you don't like the way you're feeling, then do something. And we're all going to go through dark nights of the soul. It's a natural part of our growth and development. That's what Spirit has for us to keep us growing. So you don't get too stagnant. It's dark and painful, so you keep moving and moving towards the light and keep growing. So, keep growing. That's the key. We're all going to struggle and suffer.
And it's like what you're saying right now. It's just making me think of what you said last week when we were talking. You were talking about prayer, and prayer shouldn't be an offering to the third person or asking for something to the third person. I've been thinking about that nonstop since you said that, about, if your life is going poorly, like why are you praying to something to fix it? Like, what went wrong? Decide what went wrong and fix it and change the outcome to what has happened. And I mean, I'm very fortunate that I live that way. Like, I've never been a person to stagnate and burn out and sit down and just, like I have this hamster running on a wheel that doesn't let me stop doing things. But I just, you saying that, it was so impactful. And then a friend of mine, a good buddy of mine, listened to our conversation. He called me and he said the same thing. He said, I've never heard prayer be discussed that way before, that prayer should be more of sort of that thankful gratitude for what's happening in your life, and not a thing that's like, my life sucks, it's not going well, fix this for me. Like, here, you've got all the tools, fix it yourself. Like, like I've given you all this opportunity, so take this opportunity and do with it what you want. And it's very, I think that's such a hard one for all of us sinners anyway. Like, it's, like you said, it's if a problem happens, more often than not, you are looking to something else for the problem, because it can't be me. Like, why would this be my problem? This is a problem that's happening to me, not.
It's funny. Like, I mean, I try to live a good life. I try to live spiritually. I try to do good things, but yet, you've seen my buffalo herd, and someone's been cutting my fence, and my buffalo have been getting out. Like, it's happened twice in the last month. People have cut my fence. And I've had buffalo roaming the land, getting on roads, bugging neighbors, which makes me look like a bad neighbor. Someone hit one of my buffalo, killed it, broke its leg, and laying in a field with the femur sticking out of the hide, right, laying there to die. Someone hit it in my field. Like, what did I do to deserve that? What did that buffalo do to deserve that? It had to be put down. We salvaged the meat. We're able to donate to a bunch of Native families in the area. So it was, it all wasn't lost. We saved the meat, and people are benefiting from that. But I mean, I don't feel like I deserve that, or the buffalo deserve that. But that's life. These things happen, and what do? You make a better fence, I guess. And but these things happen. It's a part of life, right? I'm not sure why, but what can you do? There's going to be unfortunate things that happen. There's going to be tragedy that happens and is meaningless. Like, how does that even make sense? And does it make sense? Is there a grand scheme? I don't know. My sister was killed by a drunk driver. Where's the sense in that? I still haven't made sense of it, but I've had to deal with it and learn from it and grow from it. So it's tough, right? And I think we always want to find meaning in this life with every event that happens. And sometimes there's no meaning to be found. It's just something that happens, and it's kind of how we deal with it and how we react to it. And it can get us down, to be honest with you. And that's being human. So don't feel bad about getting down at times. You get down. I feel down about losing an animal. I like that animal, it's tough, but you got to move forward, and you try to correct things, and you wish people had goodness in their heart. I think that's, for me, it's just about having goodness in your heart and treating people with respect and kindness. And it's hard to do, maybe I don't always do a good job either, but I mean, what bothers me is mean-spiritedness in this world, mean-spiritedness, and people taking more for themselves and and not looking at the common good, and that really kind of bothers me, to be honest with you. I think that, I mean, you can't give everything. You can't give the shirt off your back. You have to clothe yourself too, right? And some people go too far one way. They give everything away. They give their whole life away to others, and then they one day wake up and go, who am I? And what have I done? Like, what is my life? And often there's a depression around that. So there's always that balance. You have to find that balance of being a part of the community, but also creating a strong sense of self and strong boundaries, and to really honor who you are. And that's tricky because often we're conditioned, put yourself last, put yourself at the back of the line, do everything for others, I think that's often a very Christian ethic. And I don't think Jesus would have did that. There's no common sense in that. You got to have balance, right? You know what I mean? I think we take things too far. And I work with a lot of clients. They spend a whole life serving others, and they just don't know what to do now. They're not happy, and they don't know who they are. They don't know what their boundaries are anymore. And it's a very, very tough place to be in, and it's a tough place to step out of because you've been conditioned for 30, 40 years to act a certain way. So do they do a lot of good for the community? Yes. But are they doing a lot of good for themselves? Probably not. So you have to find that balance, of serving yourself and serving others. And where's that happy balance? And drawing a line and saying no at times. We have to all say no, and having healthy boundaries. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And we're all always challenged. And there's people that are kind of, we call them, I don't know, energy vampires or whatnot, will want to, they can see that they can take something there. You see they can manipulate you to get what they need. And they're out there, it's unfortunate. And we probably often all do it ourselves at times unconsciously, and just to be mindful of that, not to take advantage of someone. If you see someone that's weak, or in a weak position in their life, why take advantage of them? Support them, empower them if you can, help them grow. And I think that's how, when we all help each other, we do it with children. We always try to empower them and try to help them. Do it with your friends, do it with your neighbors, do it with your community as well. And so I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
No. Well, like psychologically, like what you were saying about, being in service to others. I really believe that the purpose of humanity is to be in service of others. But there's a big difference with service of others the way you're taught it in a Christian upbringing. Like this, like I had that Christian upbringing, and it speaks nothing about boundaries, fixing your shit, and being your own decent person before you try and go out into the world and fix other people's stuff. And that is a huge gap that so many people have. Like so many people that I know anyway, they gain some amount of self-satisfaction out of helping others. It becomes their own addiction. Like they're not concerned for themselves. They don't eat healthy. They're not working out. They're not psychologically solid. They're not doing anything to make sure that their side of the fence is good before they go venturing to other sides of the fence. And that was a big personally, that was a big thing for me before I started learning methods to become healthy psychologically 10 years ago. Boundaries was the first thing. Like I was raised to think that, you help people exclusively, or you do these things to help people, but it's like you say, what good is that? What good is helping people if you're not solid in your own existence, in your own thought process? And it can really become a damaging thing very quickly. I mean, I lived through that. Like if you only have so much because you're screwed up, you only have so much to give. So you know what I mean? You just keep whittling yourself down to zero, giving your time, giving yourself, giving your emotion away to people. And it's, oh my God, it's exhausting, man. But like you said, it's a precondition to a Christian way of life. Like, helping others, and helping others again I believe it's the highest calling you could have. But I believe that helping others is supposed to be done in your professional time and in your personal time when all of your own personal issues are sorted. Like you go out and do those things. You don't start from nothing and try and do those things.
Absolutely. And we're not trying to beat up on religion. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It is great. And But it goes back to the whole question about healing, right? People often, like, I truly believe we have to start healing ourselves before we can help heal others, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you can't wait till you're fully healed before you help others, because no one will be helping anyone.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But you have to do your own work. We all suffer, like I said, and like I know that's one thing about the path of shamanism, just the whole approach of healing. That's what got me involved with it. Is you have to heal. You have to. This realm we exist in, this plane of existence where we live our waking consciousness, we wake up to every day, is a realm of suffering. It's a realm of great beauty. It's a realm of dualism. It's dualistic. It's got the opposites here. We live in the world of opposites. It's a spectrum, but there's good and there's bad. There's happy. There's sad. We're going to celebrate. We're going to cry. There's all of that, and we're all going to be scarred. We're all going to have beautiful experiences. Some of us chase, all we do is try to feel good, our whole life, and that's all we chase. And that's not the answer either. But we have to realize that we all have hurts and wounds and pain. I mean, I've lived a pretty relatively good life. I can't complain. I haven't had a lot of bad things happen to me, relatively speaking, so I can't complain. But I still have a lot of healing to do regardless, and there's people that have, unfortunately gone through trauma, severe trauma on multiple levels, and and they're suffering often from addictions and these sorts of things, and you have to do your healing. We all do. Even if you've had a good life, there's healing you have to do. Just we don't have everything. Not everything's. There's gaps in our learning. There's gaps in our development. There's neglect at times. No parent's perfect. I'm not perfect. My kids will be going to counseling too, I'm sure.
My wife and I. My wife and I say that joke to each other constantly. Like we try and be these super diligent parents and make sure the kids are psychologically healthy and they're taken care of and all sort of stuff. And, we go to bed at night, we play this game of like, what do you think it is we do to our kids that they're going to go to counseling for? Like, we think we've covered all these bases.
A lot.
But that's it. No one gets out of this alive. I'm just hoping that their problems are lesser than what mine were, and their kids' will be lesser than what mine was too. But
that's what I always tell my kids is I say, look, I'm trying to do better than my dad did. Did he try to do better than his dad? I don't know, but he did. I'm sure he did, but, and do I have a lot of problems and mistakes? Absolutely. But I'm trying to be conscious of them. And I always tell them, yeah, I'm making lots of mistakes. A lot of it's my upbringing. A lot of it's from where I'm from. I'm not a city person. And they're city kids, so there's a bit of a not disconnect, but there's different kind of habits and patterns. And I always tell them that your job as a kid is to be, embrace my goodness, embrace my strengths, and be aware of my weaknesses, and grow from those, and be very conscious of them, because they're going to be kind of unconsciously within you. And you're going to have to probably fight those weaknesses and bad habits I had because you grew up around them and you're raised in that soil. So I always tell them that, and even the grandparents too, right? They got to be conscious of their bad habits, and, embrace our goodness and learn from our teachings, and learn from our strengths, but also use our weaknesses as a guide too, and try to overcome that so you don't pass those on to your children. So I always tell my kids that, and say I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. And just for them to be conscious as they grow, what they want to do and who they want to become. And I put a lot of responsibility on them, and that's their job to be independent. It's their job to make good choices. Ultimately, they have to live their life. I can't live it for them. They have to be conscious of that now. I can't save them. You're going to live your life, and you're going to be an independent adult, and I want you to be all beautiful souls, but you have to make good choices and take responsibility for your actions and be conscious of what's happening around you. And I think often, even as adults, we blame our parents for everything. We always blame our parents. Well, again, we're being a victim. No parent's perfect. And a lot of, it's funny how many clients, when they actually start to forgive their parents, how much healing actually happens. And often it becomes when they become parents, they go, holy shit, I've sure messed up too. And they start to have forgiveness for their parents, but they spend, maybe 20 years, or more, 30 years, seeing them as the root of the source of all their problems. And sure, they probably are, as I will be for my children, but don't be a victim to it, and try to see their weaknesses as a strength for you to I mean, it's not in your shadow anymore. And that's a beautiful thing. We've talked about that before, I think. It's those elements that are hidden in our shadow. that we have no control over, or the aspects of us that are unconscious, we're not conscious of.
Mm-hmm.
And often through healing, I find these things start to become conscious for us when we do healing work, and people get all alarmed and worried and go, "Oh my God, look at this! Look at who I am! I'm ugly. I didn't think this existed." Well, most people saw it. It was in your shadow. It was behind you. You just weren't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they get all alarmed, and often they become depressed because they're starting to understand an aspect of themselves that they don't like. What I tell them is, no, this is beautiful because now you can actually do something about it. You see it, you can actually do something about it. This is an opportunity for change and healing and growth. This is because you have enough power to actually take it on. So things that remain in our unconscious, that remain in our shadow, they remain there because we don't have the power to face them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the spiritual strength to deal with them. If everything came out into the light, we'd probably be devastated. We'd become, crippled by them. So I always tell people that it's not bad to see your ugliness. That's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can do something with it. It's not bad to see my hurt and my wounds. This is good because now we can actually heal it. So, and then we're going through a dark time. These things are being presented to you to do something about. The problem is in the dark times, we tend to not to do anything about them. We often let the darkness envelop us. And that's not its purpose. It's supposed to get us moving, to work towards our growth and healing, to look in the mirror and to do these things. So very important thing. So don't be a victim to your parents. Don't be a victim to your life. Stand up, be strong, claim your life, and to do something about it, and to grow into who you're meant to become. We all have beautiful seeds within us. We all have gifts to share with this world. Some of us, it takes longer to find. Some of us find them, and then we realize there's more to give, or that's maybe, you said you had another career before this. So have I.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the old days where you had a career for 40 years. Now you have a career every 5 years, I think.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So you're always changing, and that's fine. It's kind of often fun. It's all often hard,
Mm-hmm.
but, and that's just the way life is. It's always growing and evolving and changing. If you had a career for 40 years, kudos to you. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the truth. I couldn't do it myself, but that was an amazing explanation, Wade. I'll to everyone, I will take out what Wade just said and I will post it apart from the rest of this podcast. That was one of your that was one of your thoughts, Wade, that was like just hit me right in between the eyes about, I often don't consider myself a victim, but when I was listening to you speak there, I was like, fuck, I got some things I need to work on, obviously. But
I'm standing in a field of butterflies all around me, so I think they're inspiring me. Butterfly energy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty beautiful, actually.
I bet it is. So that's awesome. And so to wrap it up, you're a busy man on a farm right now, and you got to take care of some business. What do you have coming up? How can they get a hold of you? What's going on? When are you back in the big city?
I have a workshop 24th, 25th. So again, the introductory online workshop, it's called the Shamanic Journey Workshop, where we teach you how to do the shamanic journey method. And that's the key. That's where all shamanic practice starts. How we shift our consciousness, move into the spirit realms, how we keep ourselves safe, knowing those territories. And this is where the whole spiritual journey begins. So if you're interested in this work, give me an email. Go to my website, calgaryshaman.com, or email me at info@calgaryshaman.com. I'll get you the info. Maybe a bit delayed. I'm kind of busy right now, but I'll get to you for sure. But start with a workshop. That's the key. The online ones are actually really reasonably priced, to be honest with you. So it's a good chance to get some good training. 12 to 4, Saturday, Sunday. So it's not even that very long of a time period. I also actually an announcement I actually have for those of you who have all the prerequisites. We're offering the online extraction workshop September 18th and 19th. So to learn how to do extraction work, removing localized spiritual intrusions, I get into our spiritual body. It happens to everyone. How to remove them at a distance. The in-person workshop we teach how to remove them with a client in the room present, but it's also important to learn how to remove these intrusions from a distance, and it can be done, and it's very effective work because we all have intrusions at times, attachments, these sorts of things that of negative energies or or these sorts of things that attach to our energy systems that often can drain us or complicate our lives or just kind of keep us out of our power. So it's important to, I always say it's good to get a spring cleaning every year, get your system cleaned out. So we're teaching that workshop to do it at a distance, September 18th and 19th. There is quite a few prerequisites for that one. Check that out. And then the fall, I'm hoping maybe the fall in person. I'm not sure. I have to get the green light still from the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. It depends where this pandemic goes. I know in Alberta, everything's opened up again. People, I think, aren't wearing masks now in stores and stuff, which is kind of shocking. You know what I mean? If you go from pandemic life to like some rembrandt or being back to normal again.
Yeah,
you know.
I know
it's kind of weird.
It's so strange. I love it, but it's so strange. I was in the grocery store the other day looking around with my kids thinking like, this is so weird. Like, I can see people's faces and they're, I feel like when they look at me, I have to give them some sort of salutation. I felt like before everyone was just sort of fading to black, right? I'd leave my sunglasses on and my mask on. Like I was wearing a helmet. Nobody knew I was there.
It was a weird experience, and I learned from it. I mean, it's, I don't know. It was different. The whole pandemic. It's hopefully we become stronger in humanity through this experience. It's I think change or different experiences often do. We learn from them and we grow. So always trying to make a positive out of a negative is the key here. And so we'll see. I'm dying to do in-person workshops, but again, it's out of my hands. So I'll let everyone know once we do have that happen. And again, I'll try to post some more on my Facebook page. You've been helping me with that. So like I said before, I'm kind of a troglodyte with technology at times, and especially Facebook, but I'm kind of getting up to speed slowly. So maybe I'll take a few more shots here and there as I'm doing my work up here in the North Country. It's so beautiful. It's kind of nice to share the beauty, actually. It's just such a beautiful place to be. And maybe a drum circle sometime this summer too, depending on my schedule. But just training, healing. I'm always back to doing healing work once I get back to my shop there or back to Calgary. I'm always doing healing work. So if you're interested in starting your healing journey, let me know. But otherwise, just going to keep trucking along here and going to go check the buffalo here soon. Got I'm out here in the pasture. Got to see what they're up to today, and got a lot of miles to make. So that's kind of what I'm up to today.
But that's great, Wade. And that's great that you can do extraction. I'll be signing up for that one ASAP. Awesome. I'll talk to you about that afterwards here, and everyone that's listening that's a dork for this like I am, I'll see you guys there too.
That's right.
But thank you, Wade. That was a wonderful one today. It was so interesting speaking to you on a live with all of that happening behind you, and I just have this gross gray wall behind me right now. So yeah, it was a wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time up in the Peace Country, and yeah. So to all of you, if you're looking to get a hold of Wade, it's calgaryshaman.com. It's Shaman Wade on Facebook. And if you are a practitioner, if you are well and truly indentured into this and you are on social media, there is a private page. I believe you have to get a hold of Wade to be admitted to it, but it's a whole bunch of people that live this walk. It's a nice page to be a part of. It's a pretty tight knit community of people when you follow these sorts of things. So go over there and check that out. Wade, thank you very much. Enjoy the Peace Country. Say hello to your buffaloes for everybody and have a good one.
Peace, brother.
See you, Wade.
You betcha.